Mother-in-law demanded uninvite mom to wedding, but I refused. She tried sabotage my wedding day worst. I am 28 female and my fiancé Robert is 30 male. We have been together for 5 years and got engaged last year. Planning the wedding started off really fun, picking out venues, tasting cakes, all that good stuff. Robert and I are pretty laid back, so we wanted a relaxed but still beautiful wedding. We decided on a date 6 months out to give us enough time to plan without rushing. Everything was going relatively smoothly until my future mother-in-law, Carol, decided to take over. Carol is, well, she's a lot. She's very opinionated, very controlling, and honestly, kind of dramatic. From the moment we got engaged, she started offering her unsolicited advice on everything, from the color scheme to the seating arrangements. At first, I tried to be polite and just nod along, but it quickly became clear that she wasn't just offering suggestions, she was making demands. The first real red flag was when she started criticizing my choice of dress. I had found this beautiful, simple A-line dress that I absolutely loved. It felt like me, but Carol hated it. She told me it was too plain, not special enough for a wedding, and that I needed something more glamorous to impress Robert's family and friends. She even tried to take me to a bridal boutique to pick out a dress she approved of. I had to put my foot down and tell her, politely but firmly, that I loved my dress and that was that. Then came the guest list drama. Robert and I had agreed on a reasonable number of guests, mostly close family and friends. Carol, of course, had other ideas. She wanted to invite every distant relative she had ever met, plus all her friends from her book club, her yoga class, and her bridge group. Our guest list was ballooning, and the budget was starting to look scary. We managed to push back on that, thankfully, and get her to cut down her list a bit. But then she started focusing on one person in particular, my mom, Susan. Carol has never really liked my mom. I'm not entirely sure why. My mom is a sweet, kind woman. She can be a little quiet, but she's always supportive and loving. I think Carol sees her as competition, maybe because my mom is also a mother of the bride, and Carol just can't stand not being the center of attention. Whatever the reason, Carol has always been subtly, and sometimes not so subtly, critical of my mom. One afternoon, Carol called me, and her tone was immediately serious. "Sophie," she said, "we need to talk about the guest list." I braced myself, knowing this wouldn't be good. "It's about your mother," she stated, her voice dripping with disapproval. I asked her what about my mom. "Well," Carol said, in this very condescending tone, "I don't think it's appropriate for your mother to be at the wedding." I was completely taken aback. I literally laughed, thinking she had to be joking. "Are you serious, Carol?" I asked. "Of course I am serious, Sophie," she replied, sounding offended that I would even question her. "Your mother, well, she just doesn't fit in with our family. She's not sophisticated enough, and frankly, she'll probably just embarrass you." Reddit, I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. This is really how she talks. I was stunned. "Embarrass me," I repeated, trying to process what she was saying. How would my own mother embarrass me at my wedding? Carol launched into this whole spiel about how my mom was too simple, too quiet, and how she would clash with Robert's side of the family, who are all so refined and socially adept. She even said my mom's dress sense was questionable, and she would probably wear something totally inappropriate. I was furious. Mom is the most supportive person in my life, and the idea of not having her at my wedding was unthinkable. "Carol," I said firmly, "my mother is coming to my wedding. That is not up for discussion. She's my mother and I love her, and she will be there to see me get married." Carol huffed and puffed and tried to argue, but I stood my ground. I told her that if she continued to push this issue, she was going to cause a major problem between us, and honestly, between her and Robert too. She finally backed down, but not without making a few more passive-aggressive comments about my mom under her breath. I thought that was the end of it. I was so wrong. Over the next few weeks, Carol's behavior got worse. She started calling me constantly, sometimes multiple times a day, with wedding emergencies. These emergencies ranged from the truly ridiculous, like the shade of white of the tablecloths not being pure enough, to the downright insulting, like suggesting we needed to hire a wedding coordinator to keep my mom from wandering off, or saying something awkward. I tried to talk to Robert about it, but he was kind of stuck in the middle. He loves his mom and he doesn't like to see us fighting. He would try to mediate, but honestly, it just made things worse. He would tell Carol to back off, but she would just play the victim and say I was being unreasonable and attacking her. And then she'd turn around and tell me that I needed to be more understanding of her concerns and that she was just trying to help. Help by making my wedding planning a living hell. Right. The week before the wedding was the worst. Carol ramped up her efforts to control everything. She started contacting vendors directly, changing orders without consulting me, and even trying to reschedule appointments. I found out she had called the florist and tried to change my bouquet to something she thought was more appropriate. I had to call the florist myself and make sure they stuck to the original order. It was exhausting. The day before the wedding, I was at my wit's end. I was stressed, sleep-deprived, and honestly starting to dread my own wedding. I just wanted it to be over. That evening, we had the rehearsal dinner. It was supposed to be a relaxed, happy occasion, but Carol managed to turn it into another opportunity for drama. During the dinner, she made a toast. It started off okay, with the usual congratulations and well wishes. But then she started talking about how important family was and how weddings were about bringing families together. And then she looked right at my mom, who was sitting across the table, and said, "Some families are just more complicated than others." There was this awful, heavy silence. Everyone at the table knew exactly what she meant. My mom looked down, clearly embarrassed and hurt. I was absolutely livid. I stood up, interrupting Carol mid-sentence. "Carol," I said, my voice shaking with anger, "that's enough. You need to stop. This is my wedding weekend, and I will not tolerate you being rude and disrespectful to my mother or to anyone else." Carol looked shocked and offended, but I was done being polite. I was done trying to appease her. I turned to my mom. "Mom," I said, "you look beautiful tonight. I'm so happy you're here." And then I glared at Carol. The rest of the dinner was tense, to say the least. But at least Carol shut up for the rest of the night, or so I thought. Update 1. My phone has been blowing up with notifications since I posted this last night. I honestly didn't expect so many people to respond, but wow, Reddit, you guys are amazing. Thank you for all the support and validation. It's really helpful to know I'm not crazy and that Carol's behavior is, in fact, completely out of line. A lot of you are asking for updates, and trust me, there's definitely more to the story. You won't believe what happened on the actual wedding day. First of all, I want to address some of the comments and questions. Yes, Robert is aware of everything that's going on. He's not blind to his mother's behavior. He loves me and he's on my side, but he's also very conflict avoidant, especially when it comes to his mom. He grew up walking on eggshells around her, and it's hard for him to break out of that pattern. He has had conversations with her, telling her to back off and respect my wishes, but she's very good at manipulating him and playing the victim. He's promised me he'll have a serious talk with her after the wedding, and I'm holding him to that. Some of you are asking why I didn't just elope or drastically cut back Carol's involvement. Honestly, eloping did cross my mind a few times, especially in the last week. But Robert and I both really wanted to have a wedding with our family and friends. And we didn't want to let Carol ruin our plans completely. We figured if we could just get through the wedding day, we could deal with her behavior afterwards. Big mistake, I know. As for cutting back her involvement, I tried. Believe me, I tried. But Carol is like a force of nature. She just bulldozes her way into everything. And because Robert was trying to keep the peace, he sometimes inadvertently enabled her. Looking back, I should have been more assertive and put my foot down harder earlier on. Lesson learned for future family events for sure. Okay, so back to the story. The morning of the wedding, I woke up feeling surprisingly calm. I think I was just numb at that point. I went to get ready with my bridesmaids at the venue. Everything seemed to be going smoothly at first. Hair and makeup were on schedule, the venue looked beautiful, and my bridesmaids were being amazing and supportive. My mom arrived, and it was so good to see her smiling and relaxed. For a few hours, I actually forgot about Carol and all the drama. Then, about 2 hours before the ceremony, chaos erupted. My wedding planner, Sarah, came rushing into the bridal suite looking flustered. "Sophie," she said, "we have a problem." I asked her what was wrong. "It's the flowers," Sarah said. "They're different." "Different how?" I asked, confused. "Well," Sarah hesitated, "they're not what you ordered. They're all wrong." I went with Sarah to take a look, and I couldn't believe my eyes. My beautiful, elegant bouquets, the ones I had spent hours choosing, were gone. In their place were these monstrosities. They were huge, gaudy, and completely clashed with the color scheme of the wedding. They were also filled with lilies, which I am actually allergic to. I started to panic. "Who would do this?" I asked, my voice rising. Sarah looked uncomfortable. "Well," she said quietly, "Mrs. Carroll called the florist this morning. She said there had been a mistake with the order and she was just fixing it." I was beyond furious. Carol had actually sabotaged my wedding flowers on the morning of my wedding. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to march right over to where Carol was getting ready and give her a piece of my mind. But I knew I couldn't lose it right then and there. I had to stay calm, at least for a little while. I told Sarah to try to salvage the situation as best she could. Maybe the florist could recreate the original bouquets quickly, or at least remove the lilies. Sarah said she would do her best, but it was going to be difficult with so little time. While Sarah was dealing with the flower fiasco, my maid of honor, Jessica, came to me with another problem. "Sophie," she said, "there's something wrong with the music." I asked her what she meant. "Well," she said, "the DJ just told me that the playlist has been changed." "Changed?" I asked, feeling a knot of dread forming in my stomach. "Yes," Jessica said, "apparently Mrs. Carroll gave him a new playlist this morning, and it's not exactly wedding music. I went to talk to the DJ myself." He looked sheepish and apologetic. He explained that Carol had come to him earlier that morning, very insistent, saying that she was the mother of the groom and she needed to make a few minor adjustments to the music. He showed me the new playlist. It was filled with polka music. Polka music, read it. At my wedding, I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Carol had actually tried to replace my wedding music with polka music. Was this woman insane? I told the DJ to ignore Carol's playlist and stick to the original one. He looked relieved and promised he would. But I was starting to feel completely overwhelmed. The flowers, the music, what else was Carol going to sabotage? I felt like I was in some kind of bizarre nightmare wedding movie. Then things went from bad to worse. My bridesmaid, Natasha, came rushing into the bridal suite, her eyes wide with panic. "Sophie," she gasped, "you need to come downstairs now." I asked her what was wrong, bracing myself for the worst. "It's your mom," Natasha said, her voice trembling. She's locked in the bathroom." "Locked in the bathroom," I repeated, completely bewildered. "Yes," Natasha said, "I think Carol locked her in there." Update 2. Okay, Reddit, I'm still reeling from everything that happened on my wedding day. Your comments and support are really helping me process this craziness. Thank you all so much. It's insane how many of you have had similar experiences with overbearing mothers-in-law. Misery loves company, I guess, but it's also comforting to know I'm not alone in this. So, yes, you read that right. My mother-in-law actually locked my mom in the bathroom on my wedding day. Apparently, while I was dealing with the flower and music disasters, Carol had cornered my mom in the hallway outside the restrooms. According to Natasha, who witnessed the whole thing, Carol started arguing with my mom, accusing her of trying to steal the spotlight and making things difficult. My mom, being my mom, tried to de-escalate the situation, but Carol just kept getting more and more aggressive. Then Carol apparently grabbed my mom's arm and literally dragged her into the nearest restroom. Natasha said she was so shocked she didn't react fast enough. By the time she realized what was happening, Carol had shoved my mom into a stall and locked the door from the outside. Natasha immediately tried to open the stall door, but it was locked tight. She could hear my mom inside, banging on the door and calling for help. Natasha ran to get Jessica and the other bridesmaids. They all rushed to the bathroom and started trying to force the stall door open. Meanwhile, Natasha went to find me. When Natasha told me what had happened, I lost it. I completely lost it. All the stress, all the anger, all the frustration just exploded. I stormed out of the bridal suite, wedding dress and all, and headed straight for the restroom. When I got there, my bridesmaids were still trying to get the stall door open. I could hear my mom crying inside. I pushed my way through the crowd and started banging on the stall door myself. "Mom," I shouted, "are you okay?" "Sophie," she cried back, "is that you?" "Yes, Mom, it's me," I said, "we're going to get you out of there." By this point, a small crowd had gathered outside the restroom, including some confused and concerned guests. Robert, thankfully, arrived just then, looking bewildered. He asked what was going on. Jessica quickly explained the situation, pointing an accusing finger at Carol, who was standing nearby, looking smug and self-satisfied. Robert's face went white. "Mom," he said, his voice trembling with anger, "did you do this?" Carol just shrugged and said she was being hysterical, she needed to calm down. "Calm down by locking her in a bathroom," Robert yelled, "are you serious? This is insane." He turned to me, "Sophie, I am so sorry. I don't even know what to say. I didn't say anything." I was too angry to speak. I just wanted to get my mom out of that bathroom. Robert, bless his heart, didn't hesitate. He literally kicked the stall door open. It splintered and cracked, but it swung open, revealing my mom huddled inside, sobbing. I rushed in and hugged her tightly. "Mom, are you hurt?" I asked, checking her over. She was shaken and upset but physically okay, thank goodness. We got my mom out of the restroom and took her back to the bridal suite to calm down. My bridesmaids were incredible, comforting her and making sure she was okay. I stayed with her for a few minutes, just holding her and telling her how much I loved her and how sorry I was that this had happened. She was still crying, but she was starting to calm down. Meanwhile, Robert was dealing with Carol. I didn't see exactly what happened, but Jessica told me later that Robert absolutely tore into his mother. He was yelling at her, telling her that she had crossed every line imaginable and that he was disgusted by her behavior. Apparently, Carol tried to defend herself, saying she was just trying to protect me and make sure everything was perfect. Robert wasn't having any of it. He told her that she was ruining my wedding and that if she didn't apologize to my mom immediately, he would make her leave. Carol, surprisingly, did apologize, sort of. It was a very grudging, insincere apology, mumbled through gritted teeth. But she did say sorry to my mom, in front of Robert and a few of my bridesmaids. My mom, being the bigger person, accepted her apology, even though I could tell she was still very hurt. After that, things were tense, to say the least. Carol was still at the wedding, but she kept her distance from me and my mom. Robert stayed by my side the entire time, making sure I was okay. The ceremony actually went off without a hitch, thankfully. Walking down the aisle and seeing Robert waiting for me, all the stress and drama just melted away for a few minutes. It was a beautiful ceremony, and I almost managed to forget about everything that had happened earlier. The reception was, well, it was a wedding reception. People danced, ate, drank, and tried to have a good time. But there was definitely an undercurrent of tension in the air. Carol circulated, putting on a brave face, but you could tell she was fuming. My mom, bless her heart, tried to enjoy herself, but I could see she was still shaken. I spent most of the reception trying to make sure both my mom and Robert were okay, and trying to pretend that everything was normal. After the wedding, Robert and I left for our honeymoon. Honestly, I was so relieved to get away from all the wedding drama. We went to a beautiful island and spent 2 weeks relaxing on the beach, swimming in the ocean, and trying to forget about Carol and her craziness. It was exactly what we needed. Update 3. Wow, Reddit, I am blown away by the response to my story. I never expected it to get this much attention. Thank you all for your comments, advice, and support. It really means a lot to me. A lot of you are asking for updates on what happened after the wedding, and what's going on with Carol now. So here's the latest. First of all, Robert and I had a serious conversation about his mom as soon as we got back from our honeymoon. I told him that while I love him very much, I cannot and will not tolerate Carol's behavior anymore. I explained to him how incredibly hurtful and disrespectful she had been, not just to me, but to my mom as well. I told him that her actions on our wedding day were completely unacceptable, and that if he didn't set some serious boundaries with her, it was going to cause major problems in our marriage. Robert completely agreed with me. He was just as disgusted and embarrassed by his mom's behavior as I was. He admitted that he had been too lenient with her in the past, trying to avoid conflict and keep the peace. But he realized that her behavior was escalating and that he needed to take a firm stand. He promised me that he would have a serious conversation with her and make it clear that her actions were unacceptable and would not be tolerated in the future. And he did. The very next day, Robert went to see his parents. He sat down with Carol and his dad, Gary, and laid it all out. He told them exactly what Carol had done at the wedding, from sabotaging the flowers and music to locking my mom in the bathroom. He told them how humiliated and hurt I was, and how much damage Carol had done to our relationship. He told Carol that her behavior was selfish, controlling, and completely unacceptable. And he told them both that if Carol ever pulled anything like that again, there would be serious consequences. Apparently, Gary was just as shocked and appalled by Carol's behavior as we were. He had always been more laid back and let Carol run the show, but even he was finally fed up. He actually sided with Robert and told Carol that she had gone way too far and needed to apologize properly, not just to my mom, but to me and Robert as well. Carol, of course, didn't take it well. She started crying and playing the victim, saying that we were all being unfair to her, that she was just trying to help, and that we were all ganging up on her. But Robert and Gary stood their ground. They told her that her help was actually sabotage, and that her behavior was causing more problems than it solved. They told her that she needed to respect our boundaries and our decisions, and that if she couldn't do that, she would be excluded from our lives. After a lot of tears, yelling, and arguing, Carol finally agreed to apologize. Again, it wasn't the most sincere apology in the world, but it was better than nothing. She called me a few days later and mumbled something about being sorry if she had offended me and that she just wanted me and Robert to be happy. I accepted her apology, mostly for Robert's sake, but I made it clear to her that I was still very hurt and that it would take a long time for me to forgive her completely. Since then, things have been better, but still tense. Carol has been on her best behavior, at least on the surface. She hasn't tried to interfere in our lives as much, and she's been more polite and less critical. But I can still sense the underlying resentment and control-freak tendencies. I'm keeping my distance from her and being very cautious in my interactions with her. Robert is also being more assertive with her, and he's making it clear that he's on my side. My mom is doing much better now. She was understandably shaken by the bathroom incident, but she's a strong woman, and she's not letting Carol's craziness get to her. We've talked about it a lot, and she's been incredibly supportive of me and Robert. She's even managed to find some humor in the whole situation, which is amazing. Robert and I are doing great. The wedding drama was definitely stressful, but it actually brought us closer together. We learned how to communicate better, how to support each other, and how to stand up for ourselves and our relationship. We're stronger now than ever before, and we're excited to start our married life together, drama-free hopefully. Was I too harsh in my reactions to Carol's behavior? I don't think so, but Reddit, let me know what you think. Am I the asshole for setting boundaries with my mother-in-law and demanding respect? Update 4. Okay, Reddit, final update time. You guys have been so amazing and supportive throughout this whole wedding saga. I wanted to let you know how things have progressed in the past few months and where we are now with Carol. So after Carol's semi-apology and Robert's serious talk with her and Gary, things did improve for a while. Carol was noticeably less intrusive and controlling. She stopped calling me multiple times a day with wedding emergencies, thank goodness, since the wedding was over, and she even managed to go a few weeks without criticizing my choices or my mom. It was like a breath of fresh air. Robert and I started to cautiously hope that maybe, just maybe, Carol had actually learned her lesson and was finally going to respect our boundaries. We even started to spend a little more time with Robert's parents. We had a few dinners at their house, and Carol was surprisingly pleasant. She was polite, engaging, and even seemed genuinely interested in our lives. She even complimented my mom on her cooking when we had them over for dinner at our place. It was all very surreal. I started to wonder if I had been too harsh on her, if maybe she really was just trying to help in her own misguided way. But, as they say, old habits die hard. And Carol's control-freak tendencies eventually resurfaced. It started subtly, with little comments here and there, suggestions that weren't really suggestions and veiled criticisms disguised as helpful advice. Then it escalated. A few weeks ago, Robert and I were planning a small birthday party for my mom. It was just going to be a casual get-together with close family and friends at our house. We were keeping it low-key and simple, exactly what my mom wanted. I mentioned it to Carol in passing during a phone call, just making small talk. And that's when the Carol train derailed again. "Oh, a birthday party for Susan," Carol said, her voice suddenly taking on that familiar condescending tone. "How nice, but are you sure you're doing it right?" "Right?" I asked, confused. "What do you mean, right?" "Well," Carol said, "don't you think Susan deserves something more special? Something more sophisticated? Like a proper birthday dinner at a nice restaurant with a catered meal and professional decorations?" I stared at the phone, speechless. "Carol," I said slowly, "my mom wants a small, casual party at our house. That's what she wants. But don't you think she deserves better?" Carol interrupted. "Don't you want to make her feel special?" "I am making her feel special," Carol, I said, "by giving her what she actually wants. Which is not a fancy, over-the-top party that she would hate." Carol huffed and puffed and tried to argue, of course. She went on and on about how my mom deserved to be celebrated properly, and how I was being selfish by not giving her a real birthday party. I finally had to cut her off. "Carol," I said firmly, "this is my mom's birthday party, and Robert and I are planning it the way we want to. It's going to be small, casual, and at our house. And that's final. Please just drop it." But Carol, of course, did not drop it. She called Robert later that day and tried to convince him that we should throw my mom a proper birthday party. She even offered to help with the planning, which we all know means take over completely. Robert, bless his heart, stood his ground. He told Carol that we were perfectly capable of planning a birthday party for my mom and that we didn't need her help. He also reminded her again about respecting our boundaries and our decisions. That seemed to finally get through to her. For now at least. She backed off about the birthday party, and we managed to have a lovely, low-key celebration for my mom, exactly as planned. My mom was thrilled, and Carol, surprisingly, even managed to be relatively civil at the party. She didn't try to take over, she didn't criticize anything, and she even complimented my mom on her cake. It was a small miracle. So, where does that leave us with Carol? Well, we're still keeping our distance and maintaining firm boundaries. We've realized that Carol is never going to completely change. She's always going to be a bit controlling and opinionated. But we've also learned how to manage her behavior and how to stand up for ourselves. We've accepted that our relationship with her is always going to be a bit complicated, but we're determined to make it work for Robert's sake and for our own peace of mind. And that's pretty much it. Wedding drama is over, mother-in-law drama is ongoing but manageable, and Robert and I are happily married and moving forward with our lives. Thank you again, Reddit, for all your support and advice. It's been a wild ride, but we made it through and we're stronger for it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.